Laura, we can hear you. We're ready to start.
We're ready.
We're ready as soon as we can't hear you. Or maybe, here's a thought, close the door.
See, now you're acting out. You're acting out. Is this the kind of behavior you would display in a public area? Is that how you would treat people?
Can I ask you a question?
Ask me anything you want.
Has this episode begun?
I feel like it has. You have just displayed a kind of behavior in a public forum, haven't you?
And you've displayed a narcissism that you decided the episode was starting without me.
Oh, I thought when I heard we're rolling, see, I'm actually in show business. And when I hear we're rolling, that means we're doing the thing we're there to do.
I'm so glad I don't have to BS and tell people, no, in real life, he's nice. I'm so glad I don't have to do that.
I'm very nice. I'm very professional. I hear we're rolling.
You're condescending, which means...
I hear we're rolling, and you are abusive to the person yelling rolling.
On a scale of 1 to 10, this must be fascinating to the listener at about a 1. At about a 1.
Really? No, really? Really? No, really? Really?
So our topic today is about the epidemic of people behaving badly.
Well, the title of the episode is We Have Forgotten How to Behave in Public. Really?
Yeah.
And we wanted to explore why.
Why? And this goes from...
I
see it all the time.
Okay.
I mean,
let me give some examples.
If you turn on your social media, you're going to get flooded with videos of people behaving badly. Go
and
ahead.
by the way, there's got to be an underlying cause causing all this outrage. And we have some thoughts about that, but we have an expert coming on, Ryan
My
Sultan.
mother would have said, not raised well. Not raised well. That's what my mother would have said.
Mother was simplistic.
Yeah, she liked to cut through.
Because a lot of
noise,
there's stories of well-raised people who still act out.
Oh, that's not. When you say well-raised, you mean affluent? Because affluent is not going to.
Well, no, with parents with morals and values.
Yeah,
it may be a generational thing. We'll find out in a bit. But I wanted to give you, since you're used to Broadway and theater,
I am.
I wanted to open with some examples before we get our expert out here.
This is examples of
performers calling out the audience members. It got so bad.
Oh,
so you know this person.
I have a feeling my friend Patti LuPone.
Patti LuPone did it a couple times. Number one, not only did she yell at an audience member who was wearing a mask incorrectly during COVID.
Yeah.
She said something like, we may have to bleep it, something like, pull the mask up, and then the video audience member shouts back, I pay your salary, to which she responded, bullshit, Chris Harper pays my salary, he's the guy who does the show, so pull up the effing mask. She also grabbed somebody's cell phone, went out and grabbed somebody's cell phone, returned it after the show.
Yeah.
So she doesn't suffer fools gladly.
It.
She did return it. Lin-Manuel Miranda stopped Madonna from coming backstage after the show because she was using her phone apparently doing a performance. Wait.
Lin-Manuel Miranda was performing. Madonna's in the audience.
Madonna attended a performance and was reportedly called out by Miranda in a now deleted tweet that said he refused to allow her backstage to meet the cast after the show due to her behavior. So audience behavior apparently goes way, way back, and it's very vocal.
Do you remember what they used to do at the Globe Theater back in Shakespeare's day?
They used to yell.
They would throw. That's where that trope of throwing rotten tomatoes, and that's where rotten tomatoes come from. People throwing bad.
So then we
food
went
at the
through a period of
performers.
that, and then we went through a period of being more civil, and people got the etiquette and how to perform in public. And now we're back in a worse way. I have some thoughts about that. I have some thoughts.
Really?
You want initial thoughts before we bring out our guest?
Sure, yes.
You can see it during COVID where we were so divided, especially on the mask thing and the vax thing,
Right.
that people got into fights with people who weren't wearing masks, and people were getting into fights with people who were wearing masks because you're not agreeing with what I believe as far as the vaccination is concerned. And my theory there is, when you're covered, when your face is partially covered by a mask, you can't express emotion, et cetera. So it's easier to go after somebody who doesn't appear human. You can see all of their features. It dehumanizes you a little bit to make it easier to do that.
I get you.
So, and then of course, divisiveness and behavior has gotten worse.
See, I will play off the divisiveness. One of the things that's always struck me is in some of these cases, not all of them, but by any stretch, but in some of these cases, people get rankled because somebody, in their estimation, is getting away with something, is doing something they can't. And I think that there is, again, that divide of the have not, or the entitled, the unentitled, the whatever it may be, where people are more sensitive to, I'm not going to take it anymore. It's literally network. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. You're doing something, doesn't directly affect me, but I don't like that you're doing it. And so I'm going to...
I'll see you and I'll raise you.
Okay.
We see all over the internet people filming the anger stuff.
Yeah.
So we now have behavior you can model,
right,
that other people are doing it, and I think some people possibly are doing it intentionally.
Well, that's going to be an interesting question for our guest, because that's one of my big questions is, you can become famous or notorious by being filmed at your worst moment. And some people have paid a price for it, others have not. And I wonder how many people are going, I don't care. At least everybody's talking about me.
On that note, let's find out what an expert has to say. Dr. Ryan
Let's welcome our
Sultan.
guest.
Let's bring him out.
Well, let's do it.
So joining us now is Dr. Ryan Sultan, Assistant Professor of Clinical Psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry at Columbia and the Irving Medical Center in New York State Psychiatric Institute. He's an expert in the areas of ADHD and cannabis use. I read a bunch of stuff that you said.
First of all, say welcome.
Welcome.
There you go. Welcome to the show.
Why do you always have to hit me? Can you answer that question, why he gets physical? Why does he go to physical right away?
I mean, he's got a feeling. He's trying to express it. It's coming out. I mean, are we going to interpret it in a positive way, or are we going to choose to interpret it in a negative way?
How are we going to interpret it? How are we going to interpret it?
How are we going to feel it?
I just ripped my headphones.
He just ripped his headphones out.
I just wanted to push your seat.
I know. You wanted to throw me right out of the side. I know what you were trying to do. I know.
Well, I saw a lot of stuff you talked about the personality of audience personalities and why they're getting worse and what the cause of that is. And we theorized that maybe the COVID thing, the mask thing, was very divisive. That was a new thing that was very divisive. But also that societally right now, what we see is this behavior, and there's modeling after that. And we also don't have these big events that we went to for years. Have we really, so the question is, have we forgotten as a society? Can you forget that quickly, how to behave?
Have we forgotten, as my mother would say, how to behave?
This is definitely a complex issue, and it pulls at a lot of different disciplines. And it's got a number of things coming into it. And I think you're right that lockdown and the pandemic is certainly like the most acute and directly related thing. When we think about the fact that your social skills got rusty, and for people, lockdown varied in both intensity and duration. So for some people, this is going to be more substantial. I mean, there are patients in my practice that I saw before the pandemic, and I'm still seeing them now, that have never come in again for an appointment. And they continue to stay virtual, and they are still overwhelmingly at home a lot. And this is today. So people's variation,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a common thread between those people? Are they all elderly, or are they germophobic in some way?
I think that the pandemic lockdown around infection control, for some people, it sort of tapped into their anxiety around cleanliness and infection. And we all have that. That's like a normal protective thing for us. Like, it keeps us healthier. But for some people, it's a little more substantial. Yeah. And I think that there's a group of people that really connected with that, and that underlying anxiety they have, I think, kind of sustained them longer. In terms of not being as quick to reintegrate into what were normal activities.
Do you see children in your practice at all? So I have to imagine that 2-year interruption in what would be their normal socialization pattern or learning is and will continue to be a really disruptive source. Is there just a generation of kids that are socially behind the curve at this point?
Yeah, so when we think about that, it's important. I always talk about this with parents. School is obviously about learning knowledge. Like, I mean, I'm like super nerdy. I've gone and become a researcher, and I did an MD. Like, I love school. I want to learn things, but school's also about your development socially, your development emotionally. How do you tolerate things that are uncomfortable for you? How do you navigate difficult situations successfully? And school is like a job for kids. Right. And you know, because our switch to virtual school was done so rapidly, and of course in a haphazard way, because it really, there was no time to plan for it. Teachers and parents and even kids, you know, I think universally found it to be sort of not a great substitute for most individuals. And I think the most obvious thing that it's missing out on is this social emotional development, this stuff that really was happening spontaneously in real life, interacting with one another in a classroom setting, and was hard to replicate, you know, through a remote setup.
Are you concerned about how will those kids catch up, or will they catch up?
I think it's reasonable to think that they're going to catch up, or that they could catch up. We do think about neuroplasticity, which is the idea of like your brain and how pliable it is in learning new things. And we think about windows of time where you're better at learning things, which is why, like, the younger you are, typically the easier it is to learn another language.
Right.
So like there's a little bit of that's working against us, but in general, these things can be learned in sort of a delayed way. And if you talk to undergrad faculty, a lot of them will say that the last couple of years, they feel like the incoming freshmen have felt a little more fragile than they were in the past, and a little younger. Like their ability to do activities of daily living, like the kind of stuff that, you know, getting back to college, you know, developmental experience, like how am I going to manage my own life now? I might be going away. I'm living, you know, with a roommate. I have to interact with this person. I have to figure out my own meals. I don't have a parent to sort of manage me. That those kids seem to be coming at it maybe a couple of years younger than what it felt like before.
So I brought up in the open the fact that we don't have shared experiences a lot anymore. And I thought the term collective effervescence, we get something out of a group experience that's magical, right?
Collective effervescence.
The other thing is a lot of this bad behavior in these groups, when you get together with a big group like that, it's a rare time when you have different socioeconomic groups in there, you different race, color, religion, creed. It's not often that happens. And that behavior seems to be getting worse and worse. More incidents happen when that happens. Do you think that is A, partially because of COVID, but B, because we're so divided and we always stay with our own group. We read about stuff that our own groups put out. So we have this ideology that's just consistent with what I believe in. You get together with a big group, it's begging for trouble because it doesn't happen that often anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think that there's a way that this even interacts with another thing that we haven't touched on yet, which is smartphones and social media. And so social media creates these micro realities that we're all living in, right? These curated worlds. When I open my Apple News, like what I get is very specific. When I look at my Facebook or my Instagram feed, it's very specific to me. And so I think that is another way that we are sort of staying in a small group that is that community, but not interacting with other communities, right? You know, I have a friend of mine that loves to talk about the idea that, like, the reality of like what is going on in the world appears to be different to different people.
Which is, by the way, really scary, because I do research for the show. And I look up something in depth. You're coming on, so I look this up. And now I look at my feed. I don't know if that's something that surfaced in a big way.
Let me tell you, my life is ruined because of the things I have to click on.
Right.
For you, that you send me to research for this show. We are...
May I bring up
I don't know what... Instagram has to be looking at us and going, who are these deeply people? Disturbed people.
Who are these people?
What is their...
I'm sometimes worried that people are going to come rappelling down my wall going, he's looking at what? But from the comedy point of view, and I think Alex, Howie's son's here, I don't think Howie Mandel will mind us saying this. We were having a conversation about this the other day. About what am I being fed? Is my feed what everybody else is seeing? Is that story really big, or is it being pushed out to me because I looked up this story? And how he said the way he handles that, only Howie Mandel could do this, is when he looks up something, he then looks up the opposite thing, so hoping it will screw up the algorithm.
How to build an atomic bomb, how to defuse atomic bomb.
But on our level, if we looked up the opposite thing, people would be
would be very,
yeah,
that would be.
So how do you navigate that? And it's dividing. So it's dividing us more and more and more because we don't forget shared experience, constant experience. We don't even share info.
So, I mean, I think this is a huge problem that we have to be thinking about on a societal level. Your social media, the devices that we use, they were thoughtfully constructed using academic literature, like psychology literature, on how to keep us engaged, right? For the purpose of like marketing and things like that. But in doing so, they sort of created this like backdoor into our mind that tends to bypass a lot of critical thinking that we have. So we're actually at a disadvantage, which is one of the things that I always find like disturbing about it. And I periodically will like delete one of these programs and take like a hiatus from it. And I'll even feel something that is kind of like a withdrawal from it. There's a real connection. There's a real connection to that thing, and it plays with our mind. Right? So if I see negative behavior on there, getting back to our original conversation, I'm more likely to replicate that because it's actually contagious. The sort of negative behavior that we might see, the algorithm is more than likely going to favor that, right? Because it's going to get a lot more attention. So now you're even more likely to see it. So it's kind of proliferating throughout this system. Again, not in a way that I think anyone planned, but it's a consequence of the way this is set up.
If you're saying that, so if Jason and I see, or you send me an article, I send you an article that somebody went crazy on a flight.
Right.
Now the algorithm is pushing me more of that stuff, and I'm thinking that all of society, this is happening all over every day, and it's much bigger than it is, or not accurate.
But I also don't understand why the algorithm doesn't feed us the things that are going to make us happier, as opposed to the things that they know are probably going to agitate us, to the extent that the algorithm can discern which is which for any individual.
Because anger appears to be much. They used to say about the Howard Stern show, people that like Howard listen for an hour and 20 minutes. People who hate him listen for an hour and 40
minutes.
So, and that probably applies. Right. Anger is a very powerful emotion. So if they can stimulate you that way and they find out, boy, that works, they're going to keep hitting that counterprod to stimulate you that way, correct?
100%. I mean, that's something that you're going to get pulled much more into. Coming back to this idea of like, we appear to be a little pre-programmed, like our minds, to respond in that way. So these are, again, like, I think about these like as blind spots that we have as a species that we need to be thinking about when we develop like new technology and how it can affect us. And, you know, the other thing that comes to mind when we think about social media for me is this idea of like, how is it affecting our mental health? There is so much data that keeps supporting this idea that it's linked to depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts. And so like, there's a number of ways it could be doing that. But for me, one of them is that it being on your phone all the time is not interacting with people in real life, and it tends to be less substantial interpersonal relationships, and we all need interpersonal relationships. That is one of the most restorative thing we have, and you know, it's the basis for building out like a larger community. Which again, we're social creatures. That's what matters to us.
Didn't you write? I think it was you who said it used to be way back that we had about 100 people in our sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our network, that was our morality, that was our modeling, that was our mentorship. So that group constantly kept you in check because you got to advocate with the group and understand who they were, and they looked out for you. Today our group is what? How many people do we think is a community? So kids have Facebook friends that are like 2,700 Facebook friends, 40,000 Facebook friends. Everybody tries to build that number out. So we've lost that sense of community, correct? It doesn't exist anymore.
And we know from anthropology that is like what our mind has been fine-tuned to do well with, is that number of relationships. Like that's because you can trust the person, you know each other, you feel comfortable. You're going to manage your own behavior if for no other reason it is actually like detrimental for you to not do it in such a small community. If not, hopefully you're doing it out of kindness and wanting to sort of be giving to someone else. But there's a built-in system around that that I think is sort of completely diffused and diluted in the kind of social network you're describing.
I want to jump to something. So we're talking about the reasons why we live in some agitation, why we're depressed, why we're anxietal. But the phenomena that we're talking about in this episode is where people start to act. It's just bad behavior. Something has put them over the top. Is there a common thread between a guy who flips out on an airplane because he's been asked to move his seat, or a woman that goes up to a stranger in the park and goes, "Who are you? You don't live in this neighborhood." You know, what they call the Karen phenomena. Is there a common thread that runs through these people that tend to begin to behave badly?
I was thinking a lot about that leading up to this, because the examples of this bad behavior do vary a lot, as you just pointed out in that example. I think they fall into a couple of different categories. One of them is, just general. I think the most useful way to think about all this is like acting out. Just like, what is the skill that you have available to you to manage a situation? So if you're having trouble getting your overhead luggage up, and you're stressed out, and there are people behind you that want you to move, and is there enough space, and are they going to make me put the thing under? That kind of situation is putting a lot of pressure on someone, and they may or may not have the skills to sort of manage it, and they then may act out in some way. They may act in an obnoxious or rude way, or be nasty to someone and be irritable, which is very upsetting to everyone else and is contagious, unfortunately. I think that's sort of one version of something that we might interact with. I think that there's another version, and I'm not sure what exactly to call this. It's sort of like I'm going to do whatever I want to do, regardless of how it affects the people around me. And
I've just heard a term. People and I came across it. This main character syndrome or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it can be a little bit of like a big FU, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not sure exactly what to call it. It feels a little bit like almost like an extreme version of individualism.
Mm-hmm. But Ryan, we've been empowered. When we were growing up, you're a different generation, but when we were growing up, you got a bad restaurant serving, you told a friend about it, that was it. Today, we're empowered. You can write a Yelp review. You can feel really powerful, and you're emboldened to do that. And all of a sudden, they're emboldened. Good luck 25 years ago calling the company and saying, "I'm going to rat you out because I had bad service." Click. Forget it. Today, I'm going to write a bad review. And they'll send you free product, whatever. So we feel like VIP. All of a sudden, a lot of people feel like VIPs, which I guess is part of that main character syndrome, where you feel like you have control over every situation. Prices are higher for stuff, so you feel more entitled. Hey, this should have been. Because of COVID, people fired a lot of people, so customer service is down. They haven't rehired a lot. Companies are purging, so you can't get the kind of service you did before. And then the behavior you're seeing from politicians, from sports celebrities, from people who are angry and do this stuff gets not only not punished, but rewarded. Why wouldn't I model that behavior if everything's built around me to complain to Yelp, to see the sports guy complaining about somebody ratted him out or is trying to cancel him, and you know what, up yours, and on and on. That's the group that you had, the 100 people. You got to see the modeling behavior. Now you got all of this.
Well, there's also, but building off of what you just said, there's also a certain kind of learned narcissism because of the exalted ways that people are seeing celebrities treated. So they go, why them? Why not me? And they're right, by the way. Why them? Why not me? And so they start to have an expectation, I think, of also going, not just him, me too.
Well, and by the way, the the Instagram and influencers are celebrities.
Sure.
And they become celebrities by doing whatever they have to put out there in social media. So it's not just celebrities, it's influencers. It's, hey, that could be me.
Right.
You know, that's attainable.
I also didn't want to imply that I shouldn't be treated that way when I'm dining out, or I didn't mean to poo-poo
I understand
it.
that. I understand
I'm
that.
grateful for that.
He's still a princess. When he goes out to dinner,
Oh, yes.
he expects
yes.
to be. No,
Yes,
actually, you don't.
No,
you're very cool about that. So,
I mean, it sounds a little bit like you guys are getting at this idea that, you know, there's not a lot of thinking about the consequence of my behavior.
right. Not only that, bad behavior is a reward. You're told don't do this in school, and then you see people who are making a living doing it. You see people who are rewarded for doing it. You're seeing people lying, stealing, getting away with stuff, and you're going, wait a minute, I'm an idiot. Why shouldn't I
You feel
be
like a
part of
chump.
it? How do we move away from this thing, or is this a coming societal shift? Is this an indication of an even bigger societal shift that's coming that we don't know it's coming, that we're not prepared for? I hate to bring that up, but I don't see it.
You know, I think about this, right? Like I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I want to be, how do we reframe this? How do we make the best of this situation? For me, I think we need to think about like safeguards around how to manage this. I think we have to expect, you know, one of the ways that you train people to do these things in a better way, meaning like behave better, is like modeling, right? There should be encouragement for people that are at appropriate levels to model appropriate behavior. Because these are heroes. These are people that you're looking up to. These are people in leadership positions. I think we need to be doing that to try to sort of mitigate this.
Is the Karen phenomena a new thing, or is it just we have more cell phones now? Are there just as many incidents as there ever were of people freaking out and mistreating people at random, but now we're capturing it, or is it a heightened level?
There's data that supports that things have gone up. The FAA's number of unruly passengers per year has gone up. The likelihood that healthcare workers are reporting like disagreements, nonviolent confrontations with patients, that's gone up.
Wow.
Road rage is going. I did look at it. Road rage.
New York thinks it is because they're now going to police the subway with
the subway's having a terrible crime spree.
So obviously, that's happening. But here we are. We're people. If I had to now do a radio show and feel responsible for giving people valid information, I couldn't do it through my feeds. I have to go so deep and Google stuff and look up stuff and try and get balanced information and try and then determine what's really happening in the landscape there, that I don't know how you present an unbiased view of the world today. So that's why I'm asking if this is if the future is just moving in a direction where, like we said, red flags everywhere.
I mean, I'll tell you a way that I think could potentially manage this, which I think that our algorithms around what we interact with on our phone needs to be thought out a little bit better, because it takes whatever you're doing and it magnifies it multiple degrees.
But that's not going.
That's corporate.
That's corporate greed, and it's not going to.
I don't know how we mitigate that. I don't know who stands up and makes a law about how it's mitigated, and even what that law would look like, or how you would implement.
If you look at Congress sitting here, you've got 93-year-old men who have VCRs with clocks blinking 12, who are asking questions. They actually had. I remember the Facebook interrogation, and some senator said, "So how do you make money?" They had no idea. This newfangled thing that you're doing. Before we go.
Oh, wait, I have questions.
Do you
I have questions. I do. Well, because you're a clinical psychologist. So, just on a practical level, if I'm on an airplane and someone is freaking out, is there something I can do to either protect myself or to help sort of diffuse the situation? Is there a
you're talking about like
response?
Something is happening either to you or around you?
Yeah.
Right? You're not the one doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you want to choose, I think, the kindest way to think about what might be going on with that person, which is, I want to at least give the idea that, is it possible that something is really challenging going on for that person? And so how can I react in a way that ideally de-escalates the situation, right? Rather than escalating the situation. so that everyone can get to like a calmer place.
That's what I do, except that I carry now on flights the big twist ties. Just to have them ready.
Just to de-escalate.
Just to de-escalate.
My wife did a thing years ago. She was waiting for a train, New York subway, and I guess when the train pulled in, the doors opened, and one guy waiting to go on cut in front of another guy waiting to go on. Excuse me. And the guy that got cut off spun the first guy around and punched him in the face.
That's one way.
And was about to do it again. And my wife, I don't want to make up a story. She either got in front of him or grabbed his arm and just looked at him and in this very almost maternal way went, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. And she said the guy kind of came back to reality and it drained out of him.
And you may have read that she pushed him on the tracks. It was in all the
that's
paper.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That she was able to come over with a different energy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't think we talk enough about energy probably because it's a difficult thing to sort of like quantify scientifically or medically, but like, what is the vibe you're coming over with? And it sounds like in this story, she came over with like a, hey, it's all right.
Okay.
We don't need to do this.
Right.
Like there's something else we can do here.
I always think about, I mean, I've never been on the victim side of a Karen-like situation, but I know the minute the cell phone comes out, it's going to become more confrontational, not less.
It changes the
100%.
And I always wonder if, and I don't know the situation that anybody who's been approached by this is like, so I'm not saying that they did anything that was not right. But if I were approached by someone with that kind of agitation, I think my natural reaction would be to go, something I'm doing is aggravating you, something I'm doing is scaring you. I don't mean to give you that, so how can I help you? And I don't know why that is seemingly a hard
because you don't
thing
know
to come back
you
with.
don't know if that person again during COVID a lot of people stopped seeing doctors. Mm-hmm. A lot of people started drinking. A lot of people started doing drugs. Things changed as far as so you don't know who you're dealing with.
Sure, but
there and what's going to.
That's got a better shot, even with someone who's mentally ill.
I would think so.
Agitated.
Look, I always tell my kids, and I've said it on this podcast before. Somebody passes you on the road and gives you the finger. Gives you the finger. Blur it out. I'll do it this way, so it's
okay.
cheap.
Thank you.
I always say there are two things you can do. You give them the finger back, and it heightens
You did it again.
Heightens it. Potential. No, it's my hand.
Okay.
This is the finger. This is the non-finger.
I see what you're doing.
So I always say, you know what? Everybody's got a 50-pound bag of cement on their shoulder. Everybody's got somebody with cancer. Everybody's got a parent who's dying. Everybody's got an issue. If you smile and go, that's okay, you will watch them. You'll watch their demeanor change.
Yeah.
It's that type of thing can diffuse, but you never know who you're dealing with.
What you said, Jason, is you kind of validated the person in your example, right? Like you didn't directly, but you sort of indirectly did by saying, well, I'm hearing that something is going on here that you are not feeling good about, right? I'm getting that message. I actually have no idea what I'm doing, so please tell me, right? I mean, that's a very different stance, and that's a stance that I think will diffuse that for most people. It's not an aggressive stance. It's like a, hey, tell me how I can be helpful. I'm really happy. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that.
I guess that's my default. I had many years of martial arts training, and they said,
"Oh my gosh,
you don't want to fight. There's the last result. Do anything else you can."
What belt are you, by the way? Tan, beige. I forget what belt.
Oh, I'll show you.
The belt that you can't get off. Dr. Ryan Sultan, thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me.
A pleasure. Mr. Laurie, could you tell me how many times just in this episode did Peter mention that he was involved with radio and talk radio? Just in this episode.
5 times?
5 times. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah. No. Is it going to be about talk radio? Or radio
so the deal
in general?
Is,
radio, talk
let's assume somebody's turning into this episode for the first time.
Yes.
They kind of know who you are from Seinfeld.
We can only hope.
And of course, Dunstan.
Because otherwise, what are they tuning in for?
And why did I partner with you? You were the engine that's going to drive this thing. But Dunstan checks in.
Sure.
Or maybe even
Rocking Bullwinkle? Yeah.
Bullwinkle.
Oh, fuck you.
They don't know who the hell's the guy sitting next to Jason with the big nose.
Right.
So I like to give some context.
Sure.
So if I just said,
but 5 times?
So how do you do? Who knows?
Yeah, enough's enough.
How long? Laurie, shut up.
Oh, nice. See, That's what we're talking about
point.
today.
Don't point.
That was a
You
public
shut up.
outburst.
You shut up. I'm kicking a plane
you're
door
very
open.
Karen-y right now.
You know why? Because you're doing it with anger. You're doing it. You're not doing it.
No, I'm not angry.
Here's the deal.
I'm observing.
You're not.
I'm just making observations.
You're not listening to. But you're not listening to. What I'm
let me
saying.
listen. Tell
they
me.
don't know who I am.
They don't know who you
If
are.
somebody's listening for the first 10 minutes,
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
Do you realize what people do when they listen to podcasts? With
No.
ours, they turn it off.
I know, 'cause I don't
But
listen
a lot
to
of people I know. This man has never listened to a podcast in his life.
Not never.
You know what they're doing?
Yeah.
They're driving to a place. They're talking
Sure.
to somebody else that's on
Right.
in the background.
Yeah.
So you reinforce.
Yeah.
You reinforce stuff. So
You
I
know
should
what
just
think
say.
it is?
I should
think
just say
it's-
what when I
I
was.
think it's feelings of inadequacy on your part. That I'm a big
Oh, I don't
internationally
need that.
beloved
I don't need
comedy
that to
superstar
display feelings of
and
inadequacy.
television icon from
I
the
do
90s,
not.
and you don't feel like you have merited your seat. When in fact, I can. Let me validate you.
I would do anything
Can I
to get out of the
validate
seat.
you?
I would like Wayne Knight in this seat, and I
I'd
can
like
watch.
to validate you right now.
Here you go. Hold on.
You're
Hold on.
good enough.
Hold on. Producer,
You're
wait.
smart enough.
Producers, do it slow.
Yeah.
I think you need validation music under this, of course, from a
Okay.
library that doesn't charge. Here we
Right.
go.
Peter, just being you, your life experience, who you are, your personality, your mind, your observations, the way you think, the questions you ask, that's enough. You're enough, Peter. You're enough. The fact that you have a long career in talk radio is a bonus, and people will become aware of it because when they hear this program, they're going to go, who is that guy sitting next to Jason? And it's going to say, well,
You know what I
it's
should
right
have
there,
on my
Peter
shirt?
Tilden,
It should
right?
say Peter Tilden is enough.
Peter Tilden, talk radio 35 years.
And the
That's
new
why
rule-
don't you
and
put
the-
it on the shirt?
And the
Then
new
you
rule
don't have
here
to
is
talk about
the
it.
new rule this year.
Right.
We never mention the Seinfeld word either.
No.
ever.
I don't know who you're talking
So when you
about.
do Q&A with an
Yeah,
audience,
right.
I will talk about anything.
Yes, I did do
By the
one
way,
episode of Friends. That's what I will say.
We did Australia. We appeared in Australia. I opened for Jason briefly, and they curse a lot. They were big cursers.
Oh, yeah.
So I brought out how they curse, and then I said to the audience,
Yeah.
by the way, you can ask any questions today. You can ask about this and that, but
Sure.
no Seinfeld. And the entire audience yelled out, fuck you,
Right,
fuck
yeah.
you.
Except
So-
in an Australian accent, so it was
Hey,
cuter.
fuck.
Fike. I think they say, fuck, yeah.
And I kept saying, I don't know what you're saying. So I won't bring up, I will try.
No.
If you think
I'm
it's
just
not
pointing
important to bring
out,
up, I
you're-
like to give
you're
context.
Enough. You're enough. That's what I'm saying.
And may I say something to you
Oh,
back?
boy, are you
and
enough.
may I say something? I was going to say something back to you. You're
Yeah.
more than enough.
Thank you. Lori, we've got it recorded now, yes?
Yes, we have it recorded.
So
got a big
here's
pack.
what I didn't learn today from the good doctor. If I'm on stage and there's an outburst in the audience, what am I supposed to do?
Haven't you ever done that before? Not happened?
I've had, honestly, in all these years, I've had two things happen. I was in a play. I was in a Neil Simon play on Broadway, and yes, I can imagine if I was sitting in the front row as an audience member, it would be a little uncomfortable because that stage is right in your face. You're right up close, and a lot of our Broadway one was during the winter, and people would put their winter coats up on the stage. And I routinely would go and either kick them off. One time I actually grabbed I grabbed a coat that was really on the stage and put it in the onstage closet and let that guy figure out what
By the way,
was gonna happen.
what was I doing when you were doing that?
I can't imagine. You were probably in talk radio. And then I had a guy during Jerome Robbins' Broadway. Someone yelled out. You could hear a commotion in the. Is there a doctor in the house? Is there a doctor in the house? And you think, oh my God, okay, now there's like something real. And I'm on stage with this woman, and we don't know what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to go? Someone's asking for a doctor. Do we stop? Do we go on? Do we ignore it? Do we let them do them and we do us? What do we do? Which is a real question for any of these interruptions. Now, it turned out in that particular case that someone sitting in the middle of an aisle had a wave of nausea and began to vomit. Now, that to me is a big interruption. It does not require a doctor to be in the house. But it requires you to go, I'm feeling a little queasy. Get the hell out of the middle of the aisle, right?
So what happened? Did everybody around him start doing the?
There was a
Peter
bit of a
Griffiths,
commotion.
everybody. You know something? I
yeah.
never told you this. I know you became a Broadway icon and you got your Tony when you were young. We lived in Philadelphia, so I only went to Broadway one time. My parents, a big New York trip. My parents take me to see Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend with
Carol
Channing. We're upstairs because we don't have money. We're upstairs in the balcony seating. God, this just flashed back to me. And I'm kind of excited. It's exciting when you're in Philly and you've never been to anything like this.
Sure.
You talk about shared experience. I'm sitting there and she's singing, Diamonds are a girl's best friend. And the guy 4 seats away from me has a heart attack. The next thing that happens is he's in the aisle with a doctor. His shirt is open, and this was a giant guy, and they're doing this
CPR.
while the show is going on,
Right.
and Peter's hair is sticking straight up, and I'm in shock.
Yeah.
And then medics came, they took him out. They never even alerted her to that. I guess maybe she didn't know the commotion up there was that, but it was
No,
pretty.
I'm sure she did.
Show must go
Do
on.
they
Sure,
not?
sure,
Do
yeah.
they not have like things in theaters?
There is no, well, they may have defibs now. They might. But there is no, that I know of, there is no protocol for how to
that stuff.
handle a lot of things that happen in theaters. So you talked about Patti LuPone, yelling at people for cell phones. They make an announcement. Turn off your cell phones. There's no
people,
photography. People
As
just
I guess
defy
that
it
people
all the
are
time.
addicted
What
now.
do you do?
All right, let's
in
say hi
class.
to David Guggenheim. See his take.
Hello, David Guggenheim.
He's not here.
We know that, but he's
We
coming
know,
on
we were
after.
throwing.
Our producer.
Oh, my
We're
God.
setting up when he comes
There's
on
an
after when we
illusion
tag
that
it
this
on.
happens
Hello,
in
Lars.
real
Let's say it
time,
again.
Lori.
Let's say it again. Somebody fill Laurie in. Here we go. Let's take a moment and say hi to David Guggenheim, Mr. Googleheim. By the way, when I Google him or when I make a phone call,
Yeah.
I'll say, like whatever, call Googleheim, and there's no name.
no
Guggenheim
idea.
in
Right,
my thing.
exactly.
David?
All right, at the risk of having a public outburst, let's go to David Guggenheim.
Hey, well, listen, we've learned a lot about human nature. People are not acting really well. There's problems. There's interactions that are negative.
Negative.
So I was sort of thinking, what sort of a way that we could, starting as individuals, could maybe start to turn things around. And one of the things that has come into my life that I think might stem some of these problems is the 4 agreements. Have you guys heard of this thing?
yes,
The
yes,
4
yes.
agreements. I remember vaguely.
The 4. You ready? If I may I? If I
Yes.
can remember?
Please,
Wow. And this is probably not in an order, but be mindful of your words, right? Be careful with what you say.
Be
Don't
impeccable with your word.
One of them
Yeah.
is don't assume you understand. You assume what the other person, that you know what where the other person's coming from necessarily, because they have a different mindset than you do. So don't assume who they are.
Don't assume. Watch
Don't
your
make
words.
assumptions.
Don't make assumptions. Another one, the last one, I think, is just don't beat yourself up. Just do the best you can every day.
Always do your best,
Always do
yeah.
your
Always
best. And
do
I
your
don't
best.
remember the 4th one. The 4th one is
The-
something about
the fourth
dairy.
one is one of the very important ones. Don't take anything personally.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't remember it, because I take everything.
Wow.
That is hard. Unless I put an asterisk next to it. Unless they're correct. What if they're accurate? Is what I say. You're an asshole. I go, I shouldn't take that personally. Maybe I am an asshole. No, 7 people are saying you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm not taking this personally. 23 people
Yeah.
are saying you're an asshole.
I think it's when they
It's a
say,
coincidence.
and I'm not
it's
saying,
coincidence. It's coincidence. If one person's saying it's their thought. If it's 20 people, it's coincidence. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. If 20 people, they're still wrong. It's
Yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah.
And on that note, there's no better note to go out than love who you are, because if people are criticizing you, it's just coincidence. David, thank you. Oh my God.
Really?
Oh,
No,
really.
really.
We are helping the world one person at a time.
We are the world.
Maybe. If that. But I don't take it personally.